Welcome everyone. This is my first time of doing a LinkedIn Live, so hoping this is going to go all right. So I'm just going to wait for people to kind of start coming in, but if you are here, do feel free to say hello in the chat. It'd be lovely to know if people are here, and let me know where you are joining from today. So let's have a little look and see if anybody's joining, or whether I am completely solo. Wouldn't be the first time I've ended up talking to myself, but there we go. So we are today talking about what trainers get wrong about neurodiversity. So what trainers get wrong about neurodiversity. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, but I'm going to give it a couple more minutes to see if who's going to be joining us today. So let's have a look. Hello, Gail. Hello, lovely to see you. Hello, Tom. Lovely to see you. Just so you all know, there is a slight delay on when your comments come through and when I see them. So there's about a 10-second delay, everybody. But lovely to see so many of you here today. Morning, Tris. Lovely to see you. Let me know where you are dialing in from today. So I can see, Gail, you're saying Northern Ireland. Jess, you're in South Africa. Brilliant. Yes, lovely to have you here. Sarah, you're here from Newcastle. Brilliant. Lovely to have you. Joe, you're here from Hastings. Hello. We've got Bev from Warrington. Hi, Bev. We've got Catherine from London. Karen, brilliant, from Tooting. I used to live in Tooting, Karen. So yes, that's marvellous that you're here. You're a professional trainer, but you train volunteers with the Samaritans. Amazing, amazing. So you are very typical, Karen, of someone who wouldn't necessarily sort of call themselves a trainer, but is what I would call a subject matter expert. And that means that you're doing training as part of your role, but not necessarily as you wouldn't sort of call your sort of trainer's not in your job title. And most of us at some point in our lives will be training, will be facilitating, we just might not be kind of calling ourselves that. So brilliant. So Luke, you're here from Derbyshire, and Tom, you're from Suffolk. Lovely. Lovely. So wonderful to have lots and lots of you here today. As I say, this is my first ever LinkedIn Live that I'm running solo. This is very, very exciting moment for me. Hopefully for you too, but there we go. And we are talking today about what trainers get wrong, about what most trainers get wrong about neurodiversity. And this is how today is going to work. I'm going to be talking for about 20-ish minutes. I'm going to talk through kind of three main things that I've seen trainers doing when we're thinking about neurodiversity. And this comes from my experience about watching loads and loads of training sessions, having spoken to loads of trainers, running the masterclasses, which I'm sure some of you have been to. So I'm going to be talking about some of the kind of mistakes that I see trainers making, the kind of misconceptions that we have. And then for the last 20 minutes, I'm going to run an Ask Me Anything. So you can literally ask me whatever you want, as long as it's to do with A, neurodiversity. B, I mean, you can have a go at not asking me about neurodiversity. Let's see what happens. And B, you can ask me anything as long as it's mainly appropriate. But you can really ask me anything. You don't need to worry about offending me. I'm here to kind of answer all of those kind of knottier questions that you might have, and that is how we're going to be running today. So let's get started. And I am going to ask you a question. I'm going to test this because I haven't, just as a reminder for those of you joining slightly later, there's about a 10-second delay for me talking to being able to see your comments. But I would love to know, tell me, when I say the word neurodiversity, what springs to mind for you? What's the one word that comes up, or what's the one thing that comes up when I say the word neurodiversity? What do you think it means? What comes up for you? Tell me what comes up when I say the word neurodiversity. What do you think about? So pop it in the comments. and let's see what comes up when people are talking. Do not worry about getting it wrong. We don't worry about getting things wrong. Everything's just everything's a learning point. So let's see what people are saying. So the comments are not coming through to me yet, but oh, Juan, you're here. Lovely to see you, Juan. Thank you very much for coming. So let me know, what comes up for you when you think about the word neurodiversity? Let me know. And as I'm waiting for the comments to come through, I'm gonna talk a little bit about what I see people talking about with neurodiversity. So, first person's come in here, who is the anonymously named LinkedIn user. So hello, LinkedIn user. That you think of neurodiversity for you means that we are all unique and different. Fabulous. Gail, you talk about its human variation. Brilliant. Catherine, you're back. Hurrah. Jessica, you're talking about inclusion. Brilliant. Juan, you're talking about different, people being different. Rosalind, people being different. Emily, a different way of doing and learning. Luke, misunderstood. That's a really interesting point. I might come back to you on that point and actually get you to explain that a little bit later in the second half. Tristan, you're talking about autism. Fabulous. Exactly. Okay. Joe, you're talking about different types of minds and strengths. Brilliant. Lots of different ways of processing, thinking and processing. Brilliant. So lots and lots of really, really interesting responses coming through there. So what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to start by talking about a common misconception about what we think of neurodiversity. And this is something that I see trainers doing quite a lot and thinking about, and I see trainers sort of responding like this when we're talking about neurodiversity. So this, by the way, I'm incredibly excited to be able to do this. This is what I've learned you can do with a LinkedIn live stream. This, as far as I'm concerned, is the biggest win of the day, being able to bring these comments in here. So things that we get wrong as a trainer. First of all, we think about neurodiversity and we think about it as a category of people. Now, this is a very, very common misconception. So when we are trainers, when we are thinking about our training and we think, what are we thinking about with neurodiversity? A lot of us think about neurodiversity as being a kind of category of people. Now, this comes from a very common misunderstanding and misconception that neurodiversity means people who are neurodivergent. And actually, I'm going to talk to you now about why I think that is, why I think that's a misconception. I'm going to do it using, and if any of you have been to my masterclasses, you will have you'll kind of understand this a little bit. But I'm going to do this using this amazing picture that I bought from the Tate Modern. And I did a video about this the other day, and I realized I picked it up from the Tate Modern, which makes me sound like I'd nicked it, and I absolutely haven't. But anyway, I did buy it from the shop in the Tate Modern. And apologies for all of the reflections. It is a little bit, I know it's a little bit tricky, but I can't keep taking it in and out of the frame. So this is a picture called The Colours of London. And as I said, I picked it up, bought it in the Tate Modern. And this is a picture of all different colours. And I think about neurodiversity as being lots and lots of different colours, because we are all different colours. And as this picture shows you, every block here is a different colour. You've got pink and blue and green and yellow and orange and all sorts of different colours, but no particular colour is right. No particular colour is wrong. No particular colour is more important or less important than the other. We are all different colours. And that's how I think about neurodiversity. And that's how I think that we should all be thinking about neurodiversity, not as neurodiversity isn't a category of people. Neurodiversity is the concept that we all think and process differently. And if you look at this, it is absolutely true that some of us might be a kind of stronger orange than, maybe this orange here, or a stronger red than is here. and that for those of us who are autistic or ADHD like me and many of us here who are neurodivergent, we will need a particular kind of support or particular sort of things being done a particular way. But that all sits within, as somebody has said here, within the normal human variation, and that we need these brilliant differences in order to make up the kind of, you know, the brilliant kind of ecosystem of the human race that we have. Now, the reason that this is important to think about when we are training is that when you have got a bunch of learners in front of you, either virtually or online, this is what you're going to be thinking about. So you have got people in your room all of whom process information differently. All of us process differently. All of us respond to our environments differently. All of us can organize our minds differently. And so when you are training and when you are delivering your training, what neurodiversity actually is, really at its truest concept, when we're thinking about it in training, is that it is good learning design. So neurodiversity is about making, you know, if you think about neurodiversity in its truest concept, the sense that we all process differently, the sense that we all think about things differently, we all kind of need to participate differently, then neurodiversity is good training design. And that's the thing that is most important for me. It is not a category of people, it is a design lens. So it is the lens that you need to look through when you are delivering training, when you are designing training, that helps to make your training more effective. It helps transfer, meaning the kind of ability for people to be able to, you know, change what they're doing as a result of your training. It helps make your training more effective. It will keep people more engaged. So it is a design lens, not actually thinking about it as a category of people. So that's the first thing I want to kind of talk to you about. So we're going to we need to think about it as trainers, as a design lens. So I'm just going to pause there. Let me know any comments, any thoughts about that. Before I move on to the next question, the next kind of area that I see. Any thoughts about what that means? Any observations, any questions at this point? Let me know, feel free. But the concept of thinking about neurodiversity as a design lens can be really, really transformative, because then you are thinking, when I'm delivering my training, when I'm designing my training, am I designing it for people who think differently to the way that I think? So people who process information differently from the way that I do. So let me know in the chat, does any thoughts or comments on that before I move on to the next topic? Luke, love it as a design lens. Yeah. I think it is, Luke. I think it's a really transformative concept, because it stops us thinking about people who are, let's say, ADHD or dyslexic or autistic as different and sitting outside of, you know, the kind of, you know, the learners that you might be teaching, or something that you have to adapt for. It isn't that. It is the design lens. It is the lens that we see all of our training, design and delivery through. So brilliant. Great. Okay, some interesting thoughts coming through there. Appreciate that. Right. So let's move on to the next one. So another thing that I see trainers getting wrong about neurodiversity. Oh my God, I've done it again. I'm utterly delighted that I'm able to be able to do this. So things that we get wrong as trainers, we think about neurodiversity and we think it can be solved, which, you know, through materials. So what do I mean by this? I'm just having a quick look at the comments. Brilliant, Emily. Thank you very much. Lovely. Love to see you again soon. And Luke, you're saying training content is designed from the this is a really good point. I'm just going to go back to this actually before we move on. This is the problem with being ADHD, as I'll get very easily distracted. So there we go. So Luke, you've said here, and I'm just going to show this comment here. So often training and content is designed from the instructor's preference with a follow-on thought. How do I now make this accessible? This is like, screenshot this, like, remember this, because this is the fundamental part of like good neuro-inclusive design, is that we design from our own preferences, from our own biases, from what we think works. And actually, what I teach in the course that I run called Neurocolours is something called metacognition. And metacognition is the ability to understand how you process, how you think. And also we talk about, how do you respond to your environments and so on. If you have a better understanding of yourself, you then start to understand that people are different from you. And this is the thing that can be really, really transformative, is that we can design our training for what we think works for us, forgetting that other people might that other people process differently. So that's the brilliant, lovely point, Luke. Thank you very, very much for this. So back to this point, another thing I see trainers getting wrong is that I see trainers thinking about how to solve neurodiversity and thinking about it as a materials problem. And what I mean by materials is I mean the slides, the worksheets, the workbooks, all of those different things. We think about neurodiversity as we think about this as the materials can kind of solve the problem. So this is the reason I know this is that quite often I do masterclasses online, free masterclasses. If you haven't been on them, feel free to book. The next one is coming up next week. And a comment that I sometimes get after the masterclass is, do you know what? I thought you were going to tell us to use bigger fonts, and I thought you were going to tell us to use a different type of font and change our slides. And I don't talk about that. It's not that those things aren't important, but if you're only thinking about the people, the sort of the neurodivergent learners in your room, and you think you can solve that through materials by adapting your materials, that is only half the picture. So let me explain to you what I mean here. So this is the framework that I have created, and I've created it with researchers who are based out of University College London, in particular an autistic researcher who is brilliant, who is also a teacher and works with me on all of the kind of frameworks that I have developed. This is something I call Neurocolours, and Neurocolours is the framework that you can apply over the top of any of your sort of training design or delivery. And I call it Neurocolours because A, I think we are all different colours, and that's what I want us to be embracing. But B, I think that what we sometimes do when we are trainers is aim for this kind of perfectionism. We aim for this sort of ideal state of neuroinclusion, and I don't believe that kind of exists. I think about neuroinclusion as much more like a paint palette, like what are the textures, what are the colours, what are the shades you can be adding in. But this 8-part sort of thing that you see in front of you now is kind of the 8 things that you need to be thinking about when we are thinking about neurodiversity design lens. So let me explain to you. So on the left-hand side, what we have here is what you need to be thinking about with your content and when you are content designing. Now, it is really important that you think about the size of your font on your slides. It is really important that you think about the type of font that is on your slides. It's really important that you think about, not having too much information on your slides, but that is a tiny, tiny part of the picture. So when you are thinking about designing content and what you are kind of preparing in advance, these are the 4 things that you need to be thinking about. Now, if you've been on my masterclasses, I know that you will have seen this already, but not everybody has. So I'm just going to very, very quickly run through it. But the 4 things you need to be thinking about are structure and signposting, clarity, information load, and you also need to be thinking about purpose and relevance. Now, I'm not going to go into these too much now, but I'm just going to give a tiny pause here just to give you a chance to kind of digest this and have a think about, are you structuring your content properly? Are you signposting it, meaning are you clearly saying what is coming up and what's going to be coming next? Are you being as clear as possible? And clarity is so important. Are you thinking about information load? And information load, we tend to overcram information. So are you kind of really thinking about what's important and purpose and relevant. And this is so incredibly important. What is the why? What is the why? How is it relevant to the person, the people that you are training? So just have a look at this. I'll give you a couple of seconds just to do that. And yeah, have a little think. So. And let me know in the chat, do you feel like these are things that you're currently doing in your training? Let me know. Okay. As I'm waiting for the comments to come through, I am just going to move on to the next one and have a little think about and just see let's see what's coming through, what people are saying. So hang on, actually no, before I move on, let's move back again. I've moved too quickly. So are you structuring and signposting? Are you being as clear as possible? What's your are you thinking about information load and not overloading people? And what is the purpose and relevance? And this is really thinking about neurodiversity as a design lens. So let's have a look. So I think I'm going to move on. Either the comments are not coming in or are taking a little bit too long, but don't worry, we shall move on. So this is the right-hand part of what we need to be thinking about. And this is thinking about good design, good delivery. So the first part of the image is thinking about good design. This is good delivery. And this is incredibly important because you can have really good design. You can think about your slide, you can think about the font size and all of that, but that all falls apart if you are not managing the room in a way that is neuro-inclusive, that takes account of all of these different all of these different sort of things that you need to be thinking about. So this is the right hand side. This is focused on the delivery and how you hold the space. So 4 things to be thinking about here. First of all, you need to be thinking about the sensory impact. So we all respond to our environments differently. We all respond to what is going on in our environment. Some of us are really sensitive to sound. Some of us are really sensitive to light. You really, really need to be thinking about sensory impact. Secondly, energy and focus. We all have different abilities to be able to manage our attention and to manage our energy and focus differently. So when you are holding the room, when you are in the space, how are you designing for people who have different attention spans or different ability to be able to focus on different things at the same time? Processing. We all process information differently. Holding the space. Are you thinking about how people are taking in information? Are you thinking about how you're presenting the information so people can really understand it? Often people need more than one type of input. And last of all, flexibility and choice. Are you designing in flexibility in the way that you hold the space? So are you giving people different chances to be able to respond differently and to take part in activities in different ways? Okay. So those are the kind of things that we need to be thinking about when we are thinking about how we hold the space. And you can see from the difference here, that is so much more than just making something, thinking about accessibility, as Tom said earlier, as the kind of add-on. We need to be thinking about all of these different things, because just increasing the font size or changing the font on your slides is only part of the picture. All right. So I'm going to move on now because I think we've got a slight delay in the comments coming through. But I might just quickly pause and stop. Carolyn, you said it's really easy to overload. I totally agree with you, Carolyn. It's just we tend to, when we're thinking about this here, which is information load, we tend to design thinking about what we need to get into the content and not what is it possible for people to take on. So there we go. Kathy, so we use Kathy Moore's approach and strip back to information only for the absolute essentials. Brilliant. Not only does this streamline our design, but it helps prevent cognitive overload. Fabulous, fabulous. So Luke, structure and signposting is tricky. In a set course, it's far easier, but I'm often facilitating workshops where the content may change as a result of what we've learned in the first exercise. So this is really good. Luke, let's have this as a question question later. Actually, do you know what? I'll very quickly answer that now. It's not that your stuff can't change. It absolutely can, but you need to tell people. And that's why the signposting is so important, because we can kind of understand something, have our own thought processes, really kind of know that it needs to go in a different direction. But if you've told people one thing, you need to tell them that it's changing. So it's not that things can't change. You just need to explain that. So there we go. Brilliant. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next one now. And the last point I'm going to talk about before we go into the Ask Me Anything is that, and we've obviously slightly overrun, but never mind. I'll try and keep this quick, is that things that we get wrong as trainers when we think about neurodiversity is that we want a checklist. And I get this all the time from people saying to me, can you just tell me the things that I need to do? But if you think about what we're talking about with neurodiversity as a design lens, you can see that this kind of checklist approach doesn't really work. And I'm going to demonstrate this to you now, because I think when people will ask for this checklist, what they really are talking about is they kind of want a shopping list, right? They just want to know what are the 10 things I need to do in order to be neuro-inclusive. So in order to demonstrate this to you now, I have bought my very, very neuro-inclusive shopping bag from the very neuro-inclusive co-op, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, but in this shopping bag, I have a number of different things that I have that have been on my shopping list. So let's have a little look and see the types of things that we think we are doing when we are being neuro-inclusive, when we want this kind of shopping list checklist. So I have got red kidney slides in advance. So tick, that's something that we often think is kind of on people's checklist. You'll see people giving you this advice. It's not that this is bad advice. It's very good advice to send the slides out in advance of people, because people do need to process earlier. But it's pointless if your slides are over complex and don't make sense on their own. So it's only half the picture. So a checklist approach will only give you, a tiny amount of what you need to be doing. Let's have a look. Let's see what else is in my neuro-inclusive shopping bag. I've got ambrosia. Ambrosia, tell me what you need in advance and I will do that for you. So for anyone who has been in my masterclasses before, you'll know that something I talk about quite a lot is the fact that we will often ask people in advance and say, well, just tell me what you need and I'll adapt for you. But that is something that we should be doing. We should absolutely be doing it, but it will only give you half the picture, because we'll only tell you, you'll only get responses, A, from people that are comfortable sharing their differences, and B, you'll only get responses from people who know what they need. And if you think about neurodiversity as a design lens, then that's, you should be covering a lot of that anyway. But you'll have a whole bunch of people who won't tell you and who may not know what they need. And so that's kind of, the shopping list approach doesn't really work there. Let's have a little look what we got next. Right, we've got organic, clear agenda. So again, very, very important to have a clear agenda. But on this kind of shopping list approach, a clear agenda is pointless if you haven't told people why, if you haven't told them the purpose and relevance, if you've used language that is full of jargon, quite often what I see happening with agendas is people just talking about, let's say, the frameworks that they're going to be discussing. Well, frameworks don't mean anything to people unless you're explaining what the purpose and relevance of it is. So it doesn't matter whether it's organic or not. A clear agenda is only half of what you need to be thinking about. What else have we got here? We've got giant white beans in tomato sauce in a dyslexia-friendly font. So dyslexia very friendly font can be very, very important. There's lots of dyslexia-friendly fonts that you can pick up. The problem is I saw some research recently that dyslexia-friendly fonts actually only solve problems for some people who are dyslexic, and actually the layout is much, much more important. The layout of your slides is so much more important than what the font is. And so if you had this checklist and you went, oh great, I've chosen a dyslexia-friendly font, that's only half the problem that you are solving. And you are also not thinking about cognitive load, and you're potentially not thinking about the layout and is there too much information and have I overloaded people? Not solved by a dyslexia-friendly font. And last thing, save the Marmite till last. Cameras off on virtual training. The the completely controversial topic that gets talked about quite a lot. Should we leave cameras on, or should we have cameras off in virtual training? Now, I am personally a fan of choice here, that people should be able to have their cameras off. But, you know, this isn't, if you take a tick box shopping list approach to cameras off, you are not understanding the why underneath it. And the why is so important, because if I said to, if we say to people, well, participants should be allowed to have their cameras off, and you said, well, why? Well, the why, well, they might feel overloaded, but why? Well, it might reduce masking, but why? And I think this is the important thing, this is why this surface level tick box approach doesn't work when it comes to neuroinclusion. And this is why I'm not a fan of the kind of 60-minute sort of lunch and learns where people just come in and have this sort of checklist. It doesn't work. This is a design lens, and that's the difference that I want to leave you with today. So there we go. Those are the 3 things that I see trainers, facilitators, consultants, workshop designers getting wrong when it comes to neurodiversity. So I have gone slightly over, apologies, but I'm really, really happy now to give this as a kind of ask me anything. So please feel free. I'm going to have a look through some of the comments that are coming in, and feel free to ask me any questions about neurodiversity, about your training, about any situations that you may have come up with. If I can help or give anybody advice, I'd be really, really happy to do that. So yeah, just let me know in the chat any questions that you have, and I'm happy to respond to them now. Yes, obviously bearing in mind that there is a slight delay on the comments coming in. I think they've got a little bit slower, but let's have a look. I'm going to have a quick check through and just see some of the comments that are coming in. So Tom, you've talked about being guilty of overdoing it with information load, particularly if you're excited about a topic. And I think that is really, really common. I think I've slightly suffered from that today. This is my first LinkedIn Live, so I possibly have overloaded you all. But it is very, very common. Thanks for coming, Tom. Yes, see you later. It's very, very common that we think about designing training from the point of view, as I said, of how much we need to cram in and how much people need to learn. What we don't think about, and the true kind of neuro-inclusive approach, is what are people capable of learning. And then if you look through your content, and if you look through your design and go, these are the most important things, then it kind of gives you a different sort of approach to sort of design and delivery. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Tom. Okay, I'm just having a quick look here. So the Care Trade Charitable Trust, we adapt for each session. We make information as bespoke as possible and use lived experience. I'm really, really happy to hear that, because when we are thinking about neuroinclusion, as I said, accessibility is incredibly important. And a lot of the people who are neurodivergent also have additional access needs that come with that. But what we need to be thinking about is people's lived experience, and what do people actually need. I think the argument that I'm trying to make here is that you can't rely on that as your only source of information about how you can be designing and delivering your training. So when we are thinking about design and delivery and using that neuro-inclusive lens, if we design inclusively from the start and also ask people what they need, then we will be and then you'll be sort of covering all bases. The reason that lived experience is really important, and for anyone that doesn't know what the term lived experience means, what we are talking about is someone's experience of existing, in the sort of concept of neuro inclusion, we're thinking about it, what are people's experiences of having training or so on, and what's worked for them and what hasn't. Now, in the work that I do, in the stuff that I design, I come from both a lived experience point of view. So I am ADHD myself. My researcher is autistic. I've worked with so many neurodivergent people, and participatory research is very, very important. But I combine it with the evidence behind what works for neurodivergent people. And so it's the kind of combination of the two that means that you have the kind of frameworks that kind of come from both of those different points of views. Okay, so a couple of questions are starting to come in now. So Lynn, you've said, oh, you had some text issues. Don't worry, Lynn, this will be recorded, so you'll be able to see it. Luke said, not sure if this is a question or not, but sometimes I can get a little lost in how best to design something. I'm going to pop this on screen. Considering all the different needs from delegates, a bit like cooking for my family, a celiac, a pescatarian, a 90% sausage diet. Holy cow. And me who eats anything. Any thoughts? Not about the cooking. Well, actually, I could probably advise you on the cooking, because this is very similar to my household. I have my son is celiac, and in my wider family, we have very, very many dietary needs. And so, actually, I'm going to use this as a metaphor. I have found the best way to cook for a large group of people is to put a lot of stuff on the table and let people choose what they want to have. So this might be a similar approach when we're thinking about kind of training and learning design, which is why I talk about flexibility and choice quite a lot, is allowing people to choose what sort of works for their needs. So if you're running an activity, for example, do people always have to talk? Can they also write? Are you giving enough processing time for people to think about their answers before they have to respond to the group? Are you giving opportunities to both the extroverts and the introverts? So a kind of almost like a kind of, I get to choose how I can participate in things. I think let's have a little go back to your question, Luke. So just you get lost in how best to design something when considering all the different needs. So Luke, this is a really common problem, and the framework, that kind of 8-part framework, if you take that and screen print that from what I've shown today, that will help you to think about how do you design for all of those needs, because you have to remember that learning is a joint responsibility between you as the trainer and facilitator and the people that are doing the learning as well. So people have to be responsible for their own learning needs as well. So it's not that you have to be 100% perfect, 100% doing this all the time. Actually, what you need to do is create the environment where people can sort of articulate or choose how they respond and learn to something. So that's what that kind of framework allows you to do. Gail, what have you said here? So Gail, you have said, I love the no checklist approach. I never understood how a checklist could cover everything. Yes, exactly. When I deliver human regulation training, I work cover everything when you deliver human regulation training. I work in the events industry in Northern Ireland, and a lot of time it's a tick box. Yeah. And if we have enough money, and so it's frustrating. Yeah. So this, I get this, right, Gail? And what this is when people think about inclusion or accessibility as the add-on. So it's when people go, do you know what, I'm going to design the event, as someone said right at the beginning. Oh, and by the way, what can we do to make it accessible? And what can we do to make it inclusive? And this is the fundamental problem, because it becomes the add-on. So anybody who's a bit different, or anybody who has different needs, sits outside of what the kind of main event is doing. And that we should be turning that on our heads, because we need to be designing inclusively from the start. Because, go back to my picture here, when you are thinking about all of us as being different colours, then you design for everybody's needs and everybody's kind of and everybody's sort of different ways of sort of existing in the world. And it is true, as I said, that some of us are kind of stronger shades. So some of us have much deeper sensory needs, or some of us have much more complicated, executive functioning kind of needs. But the point is that if you solve this for us, then you also end up benefiting these people as well. And that is the fundamental part of it. And that is why it's a design lens, because if you design with those principles I've outlined for your events, you will end up benefiting everybody, and you will just have a better event. And that's the kind of process, that's the sort of design lens that I'm encouraging everybody to kind of see through. Thank you very much for coming, Carolyn. Lovely to have you here. Bev. So Bev, you said, I think giving people choice of activities helps, and giving people autonomy. And I 100% agree with this. So the frameworks that I've got and everything that I have designed is based on a particular concept called the theory of self-determination theory. If you don't know it, have a look at it. It sits underneath a lot of learning design. Well, I've started to realize it sits underneath a lot of learning design, but I think it works really, really well for neurodivergent people. And autonomy is a really, really important part of that. And this is what I mean, is that this learning being a two-part process, is sort of, hand holding between the trainer and the learners. Giving people autonomy to make that choice is really important. The anonymous LinkedIn user has said, I think giving people choice as to how they complete an activity is really, really important, and it helps a lot. Absolutely, totally agree with you there. I think sometimes it can be, this stuff can start to feel a little bit overwhelming, because you start to think, how can I give choice to everybody all the time? And this is the kind of reframe I want to give you, is that this isn't something you can do 100% of the time. It just isn't possible. A 100% neuro-inclusive state does not exist, because we are all colours, and you aren't going to be able to, be 100% inclusive to everybody all the time. But you can start to dial up the changes and start to make the differences from the bottom up. And if you think about choice and flexibility as how people choose to complete an activity, just offer it a few times throughout the session. You don't need to do it the whole time. You can just do it at different points, and that will be incredibly helpful. And already it's starting to become more neuro-inclusive for people. Okay, so Phil has said here a buffet, which I think is reference to the cooking comment I was making earlier. But brilliant. Yes, I totally agree with you, Luke. It's a bit more like a buffet. So this person here. So Hanako, how can we make webinars more inclusive? For many people, it's hard to keep up with the talk whilst reading the chats. It must be really difficult for people who need time to process information or have difficulty reading text. So yes, Hanako, thank you so much. This is a really, really important point. And I actually do quite a lot of work in working with people to help to make kind of virtual facilitation much, much more inclusive. So here are a few tips for you for things that you can do. So when I run my masterclasses, I have a kind of free-flowing chat that comes through, and it can be quite difficult for people to keep up. So I tell people they can just, first of all, mute it, and they don't have to take part in the chat. Some people are really able to kind of so I quite enjoy watching chat and listening at the same time. It kind of actually weirdly helps me concentrate a little bit more. And so that's something that I would take part in. So I basically say to people, you don't have to look at the chat if you don't want to. But what I do is I then pull things out that I think are really, really important. So I will direct people to certain things. It is true within webinars, if you think about the kind of the 8-part concept, that really, really applies to webinars as well. And the thing that I see trainers getting wrong a lot is, for example, how breakout rooms are used. So breakout rooms, I mean, we've all been in a breakout room, right, where we've kind of sat in it and gone, I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know what's going on? And they just kind of make something up. So structure and clarity are incredibly important when you are delivering an interactive workshop online, being very, very clear about what you want people to do, why you want them to do it, and what you want the outcome to be. And you have to do this more online than you do in person. So that's something to be thinking about. The Marmite cameras off, which is a lot of facilitators don't like. And the reason that we find allowing people to have cameras off trickier is because it means that we don't get the stuff back that we need as facilitators. I really, really like choice in this. This is why I'm trying to run this through LinkedIn Live, because I can't see any of you. It's a little bit of a weird experience, but I'm sort of experimenting with whether it works. Would love to know any feedback. But when you are delivering a workshop, allowing people to choose points where they can go on and off screen will definitely reduce cognitive load for people who find that really, really difficult. There are points in your session where cameras may need to be on, and that's fine. What I'm saying is don't default to it being cameras on all of the time, and don't use that as a data point for engagement, because it isn't. And B, there are other ways to get that data, which can include emojis, polls, typing and chatting, and so on. So there are definitely ways to do it. I don't have time to run through it now because we've just got to the end, but there are definitely ways that you can be making that more inclusive, and I would recommend coming to one of my masterclasses if you haven't already. Okay, Luke, this is the last point I'm going to make. It feels like there's crossovers with these principles. Yes, and delivering content to delegates where English isn't in their first language. I absolutely agree with this, and I think it's a really, really good point. And I often use that as a metaphor to help people think about neuro inclusion, because a lot of the stuff that we think about, and I think Juan is here, who is a Spanish teacher. It'd be interesting to see, Juan, whether this is something that you relate to in the work that you do with teaching people Spanish. But it's absolutely the case that you have to be so much clearer and so much more and being signposting and explaining stuff in a way that you don't necessarily think about that you particularly need for yourself. So I would absolutely concur with that. So excellent. All right, we are at the end of the session. I've gone a couple of minutes over, so there we go. You got an extra couple of minutes from me. One thing that I would love to let you all know about, because I can't run these sessions without doing a slight little plug for some of the work that I am doing. So next week is the opening date for booking for my 6-week course, which is called the Neurocolours Essentials course, which I'm going to try and pop in the chat. Oh no, I don't think I can actually. Is the Neurocolours Essentials course. There are 10 spaces available. It's a 6-week course that will teach you how to design and deliver neuro inclusively. We'll also look at your own processing style, and we will also look at how to design virtual training neuro inclusively. And if you are an independent trainer, how thinking about neuro inclusion can help you in your training business in terms of attracting new clients. So that's the 6-week program. Booking opens on Monday. I'm already anticipating that we're going to sell out half the tickets on Monday. Look at me with my sales pitch. That is actually the truth. I know I've got 5 people waiting for Monday to book. So I'm hoping that there will be some spaces available. But if you are interested in that, I will pop a link into the chat as soon as I've worked out how to do it. In fact, if anybody is on the call and can do a link go into my, hang on, I've worked it out. Here we go. There we are. So you're still learning. Every day is a learning day. But this is the link I've just popped in the bottom of the chat. And if you could just have a look at that, that will give you some information about my course. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It's been completely brilliant to have you all here for my very first LinkedIn Live. A few things that I have learned, but would love to get any feedback from you about whether this was helpful, whether this was a useful experience for you, and anything else you would have liked to have learned. So there we go. Brilliant. So thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to very quickly just look at the comments that are coming through. Tristan, coming through from the rail industry background, I've also always found that good trainers naturally adapt their approaches to the learner. Do you think neuro-inclusive practice practice is fundamentally about trainer adaptability. Yes, I think that's a really interesting point, Tristan. I'm sorry I've only just spotted it. That might be the title of my next session. Maybe I'll think about that. But I do genuinely think that you've made a asked a very, very strong question there, and I think you're right. A lot of it is around to do with trainer adaptability. It absolutely is. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming along. Really, really wonderful to have you here. Yes, I will hopefully be doing another one. Any feedback, very, very welcome. Thank you for coming, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.